All right, I knew this is going to be a little difficult when I started this, but I'm going to try anyways. I don't have the best setup for YouTube and displays, but here we go. This is something that is becoming a little more common in the receptacles of the complex and surrounding complexes. This is one of those devices that goes around the porcelain throne in the throne room, and this is the second one that I found, and I've thought about this before when I cleaned up and tightened all the screws on these things. It's employed in the throne room for its particular and intended use. But what I'm doing here is I have shortened it. I have removed the longer legs and the third shelf that goes around the porcelain throne. And what I have is a smaller shelf, good enough to go on any particular table or desktop. And what I intend on using it for is for some of the desktop radios that I have. And I was going to pull some of these things out, but it's kind of obvious how it will work. You can take it and set anything on top of these. If you want, you could probably put on some kind of small shelf on top so that there's no way for the tabletop radio's legs to fall through. And if you wanted to, you could clamp on a smaller device, just like that. I would use, I've got some of these smaller things here, and if you needed to, probably towards the back, and I do this a lot, well, like this, and clamp it on. It's hard to do with one hand, but clamp it on. There we go. And it stays. It holds the weight of whatever radio you're using. And I'm going to use this as an example because it's without antenna. And obviously on this shelf, the antenna would have to go through, and the radio hangs up just like that. It'll hold two radios, two full-size radios, I guess you could say. And side by side, I've got a good handful of those. I found 6 of those also in the refuse bin, and it does a good job for what it's worth. And you could probably do the same up there if you wanted to. See if I can find an example. One of your other radios, they can clamp up here, or you can move it down to the smaller, and it will fully close the belt clip on that, and it's out of the way, ready to go. And as usual, it's hard to see the screen for the camera, but still suspended just a little bit. It's kind of out of the way, and there's plenty of room to do all sorts of things with all of your radios. And you can clip those smaller radios around your mobile or your desktop radios. There's plenty of room for power supply or antenna tuners. You can hang off the bottom of these things, I would think. Wouldn't be too difficult to rig up a bracket that comes with the radios, the mobile radios, and you can hang those off the bottom as well. And plenty of room. You do have some leftovers, an extra shelf, and some of the cross members it came with, and the screws are back in the cross members. And I took off these that were on the bottom. There's 8 of those, and they're roughly about 21 3/4 inches long. That should give you, let's see, 8 pieces. Might give you about a 10-foot shaft, if you will. You could reassemble all those, and probably you may want to slat the bottom of these things here. And just like any other antenna or mast, you could use hose pipe clamps. You can just twist those on, just like any other device. And there's extra holes where the cross members used to go through. If you wanted to, you could use those for guy wires. Secure everything, tighten everything down. You've got roughly a 10-foot mast for, say, a lightweight antenna, like one of these up here. I mean, that's a really big mount, but you could probably modify that to something else. You've got these antennas with the L brackets. That's a marine antenna right there, and it's got an L bracket. And if you wanted to quickly, what are they called? They're not wire ties. They're the zip ties. You could run those through those holes if you wanted to, or around that shaft. There's 4 holes in the L bracket, and you could put up one of those lightweight antennas. Again, it's a marine antenna, so basically VHF. And if you wanted to, you could probably shorten the whip or change out that whip with the appropriate connector, put on something shorter. If you do the math, you could make a UHF antenna. But anyways, besides that, that's just some extra ideas. Again, saving all the extra parts. These have a screw in each end. This is what used to hold them between. This is it right here. You have a cross member for the front to back and a screw on each end. And save those. Those are from the bottom. So there were 2 for each side. And there were 4 for each side on these longer ones. That would give you roughly about a 6 or 7 foot, and probably less than that, about 5.5 feet tall device that would, support all your toiletries, your towels, your tissues, and whatnot. And I've decided to repurpose that once again for like a radio shelf. Also took the rubber feet off the bottom of the long members here. I guess you just call them legs. I just use a little bit of WD3. Excuse me. I meant to say WD-40, WD-40, water displacement number 40. And I just give it a little spritz, and I use some pliers, just whatever was handy. Whoops. Whatever was handy. And gently gripped and twisted, and it slid right off. Once it soaked in, they slid right off and right back on again. And if you wanted to, you could loosen these screws here and the cross members, because they'll go on a little further, and you could push this up beyond the screw and the cross member, so it is pinched between the screw and the cross member when you tighten it back down. Either way, it protects whatever you set this on. Once again, like it did when it sat out on the floor originally, like a tile or linoleum or what have you. And it cleans it pretty nice. Make sure you get all the acidic fluids off of these things when you find them, because they will be stained from the 1.5 to 2 feet up from the floor. Anyways, clean them up real good. They clean up nicely as long as they're not too scratched. This one's a little rusty. Don't ask me why, but they are a little rusty. It did break the paint, I guess, because once you tighten these down a little bit, you break the original finish, and then the acid gets inside there, causes corrosion and rust and what have you. So it's a good idea to clean them up. I just use regular old bleach wipes, because that's what's available, and that's what they're for anyway. So it doesn't take much to do that. I have used the others. These aren't quite as moist as these, but that's because that's the way they're designed. All the fluid is here in the bottom, and they just soak up just like any other fabric, and that's what keeps those things wet. And these are kind of the same, but since they're horizontal instead of vertical, like these are, they don't quite work the same. But they have their purposes, and they clean up. They do very well. It gets all of this sticky off of here, and dust and what have you. And yes, these things get dusty too. It's because of where they are, I guess. It seems like that tenants don't normally clean everything before they throw them out. And that seems to be held true for a lot of things, because I get lots of donations at times where they are coming from places like that before they get to the garbage bin, and they need to be all wiped down. Through regular use and standing around, even my apartment, everything has to be wiped down anyways. Everything gets dusty no matter what. I've got some extra control here for that. And then I got a fan with a filter. It's not secured, but as long as the fan is on, it stays in its place, and that'll last me a good 2 or 3 months. So dust control here is manageable, but still have to do the same, and occasionally, once again, have to wipe things down. So, use the protectant in the cleaners, and come up with some ideas of your own, and you'll have some additional shelving or things to organize your shack, because somebody else is done with it. They threw it out. Relatively taken care of, and you can do the rest on your own and come up with your own ideas. Don't throw anything out, because a lot of this stuff is still reusable, and you could use it for other projects in and around your shack, even outside of your shack. You got an extra mast right there. That's pretty cool. Even just a quarter wave vertical is good for that. You don't need a whole lot of height, especially if you're working repeaters. If you need to walk outside and do your thing, or your POTA stuff or your soda stuff, you've got an extra mast and an extra antenna. for your repeater work if it becomes necessary. You know, all the years that I've done field day, there's always been an extra radio around. Just plug it into the mast with an antenna on it, or for whatever reason, however the antenna is supported, it is plugged into an extra radio for the local repeater or the club's repeater outside of all the field day stuff that they were doing. So, yeah, it's just extra ideas and things to have on hand. Uh, don't throw stuff out. You know, you come across things all the time that people throw out under those socks. There is a very small table. It looks like a little printer stand or something like that. All I did with that was clean it up and tighten it down again, and it's ready to go. So it's no nightstand, but it can work like one. And the things that people just throw out, you know, you just clean and repair, and it's reusable again. So hey, if you got any ideas like this, just drop them down in the comments and let me know. Thanks.